All right. I think we're live. Welcome to Free Thinking Ministries Live. Thank you for joining us, all who are joining us here. If it is your first time here, my name is Josh Klein. I'm the host on this podcast, and this channel is all about helping people reason together by applying logic and sound theology to all aspects of life. Joining me today is President and Founder of Free Thinking Ministries, Dr. Tim Stratton, and host and founder of the Church Split and youth pastor extraordinaire, Will Hess. We've got an exciting program today. Today, we're going to be looking at an argument that is being forwarded by some Mormon or Latter-day Saints. We'll likely use those things interchangeably. I understand that we're supposed to refer to you as Latter-day Saints, but some of the people watching this might not understand that moniker, and so we might use it interchangeably. No disrespect.
Technically, let me jump in here.
But yeah, go ahead.
They would like to be referred to as members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
But yes, if they want me to use that entire moniker, they got to shorten the name. I'm just saying.
Right.
Yeah, that would be half the podcast, just us saying that the entire time, the whole time. So it's no disrespect intended, but it is probably what's going to happen. So this argument is being forwarded by some of the bright minds in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints world, and it's a challenging one. And we're going to take a look at the video on the topic, and then we're going to try to steelman the argument. We're going to deal with its claims head on. But the reason we're talking about this is because, Tim, you and Will were in Utah recently, right? And on a MAVEN trip. Why don't you guys talk about that? Why are we talking about this, and what does Utah have to do with it?
Yeah, Will and I were just in Utah last week. We spent an entire week together with his youth group, and wow, it was one of the best MAVEN trips I've ever been on. Will has an unbelievable group, a bunch of new Christians, these teenage students that Will has been discipling, recently baptized. Some of them were just atheists a couple of years ago. And Will, I'll let you tell some more of the stories really quickly if you'd like, but just to see this transformation in these young men and women that I saw even within a week's time. I bet Will is just blown away because he's been able to watch them a lot longer. But I just felt like I got to know them really well. And, and Will and I have been friends on Facebook and YouTube for years, but that was the first time we've ever met each other. And I don't think, it was probably some ripple effects through some metaphysical waves were caused when we joined forces together. So we'll see what happens. But Will, what'd you think?
I thought it was great. Well, that week was fantastic. So yeah, I've had the privilege of being able to lead a disciple with my team, a bunch of kids who were far from God and learning how to trust in Jesus. And so apologetics and theology is really, really core to not only what I do, like this on the Church Split and YouTube, but on my day-to-day life. That's one of our church is really focused in on those who are far from God and trying to create a place where one of our core values is we believe you can bring your brain to church. So in other words, you can bring your questions and we reason together. Amen. And being able to do that was really cool to see a lot of my students come to life over the years. I mean, one kid, you guys can actually go to Free Thinking Ministry or my channel. We had interviews, and Dice is one of my favorite students in this area because he was an atheist, and every week he would come back with a new objection. Like, that's why I don't think Christianity is true. Insert objection. Me, apologetic response. He's like, and then he'd go back and think about it for a week, and he'd come back, and we were praying over him for multiple months. And then one day, we went to summer camp. No, it was our fall retreat, and we had guys small group out on the deck at this cabin. We're all sitting there, and one of the questions of spiritual growth was where everyone was going around responding, like, what is the sunrises in your life? Like, what is God asking you to accept? Essentially, what's sunrise and what's sun setting? What are you putting behind you? And so, what are the big changes? And we went through, and I was like, so what about you, Dice? What are some things going on that are changing your life? And he's like, I think Jesus was real. And I was like, all right, that's a pretty big sunrise there. He's like, I think he rose from the dead. I was like, and then you could tell the entire group kind of got quiet and shifted looking at him. And I was like, are you saying you're a Christian right now? And he goes, I think I am. And you have to know Dice, he's like super chill. And so I was like, cool, man, that's really awesome. Glad you're part here. But on the inside, I was like, this like we finally got got to baptize them. So it's really cool. Maven, if you haven't already, guys, your youth group should do a Maven trip. It is highly immersive. Your students are trained, they're put out there. Do not underestimate your students. If you go to maventruth.com, you can talk to one of the people there and they'll set you up. But I wasn't sure what to expect on this trip. I knew Tim was going to be there, so I was like, well, if nothing else, I get to bro out with a homie, so that's cool. But if the rest of the trip is a bust, I got one positive, right? And it was the greatest thing I've ever done for my student ministry, and it's not even close. I've done a lot of other things. I was like, man, that was super successful. This was, and this is in the stratosphere of effectiveness for my students. We did a testimony time last night at youth group, and they told everything that was going on. A bunch of our kid students went up and talked about it. And I have one kid who was like, she was like, look, I'm telling I'm telling my friends that to behave this way, that this is what it is. And I'm studying my Bible. I've never really read it before, but now I'm reading it. Like I'm in, like, you could just tell Zamira. I'm sure that's not a surprise.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So yeah.
Awesome.
So anyway, very proud of my students, really cool. And then of course, hang out with Tim and challenge each other and grow together by reasoning together was really a lot of fun. Because not many people that are theology nerds out there. So I like it when I can find them.
We agree on so much, but we worked hard to try to find even a few things that we might disagree on, and we'd reason together toward truth on that. And I think we both had our minds shifted a little bit, and that's just so much fun to be able to think through things like that together. And really, that's what we want to do with these students that we bring out on these trips. That's what we want to do with the people from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints who we meet in Utah as well. And I've just got to tell you, I've been making multiple trips to Utah with Maven since, I think Brett Kunkel kind of recruited me in 2017. I think my first trip was in 2018, and I've been making multiple trips to Utah every year since. And so I've literally lost track. They could probably find out how many trips I've made to Utah, but I've lost track. And, at first, when I started going out there, I kind of had this view of Mormons as the enemy, the bad guys. Even though I'd had a couple Mormons in my life who I loved, my karate instructor, he was actually the student of Chuck Norris. True story. And he trained me, loved that guy. And I had a professor at the University of Nebraska Kearney who was a Mormon, Dr. Carlson, and loved him. But yeah, I really kind of looked at the Mormon Church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, as this. Well, I looked at the people almost as people we had to destroy, and God quickly changed my heart on that and said, no, these are not people to fight. They're not people to destroy. They're made and created in the image of God. God loves them more than I can possibly imagine. And I need to love them too. And I've fallen in love with the folks in Utah, with the Mormons. And sorry if you don't want to be called that.
Again, short in the name. That's all I'm asking.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm even a BYU fan now because I spent so much time on that campus. I've gotten to know professors. I've gotten to know students. Gotten to know just so many people out there that I have become a fan of BYU. I even, I occasionally run into some of the athletes there that we'll watch on TV and play against the Huskers every once in a while. And yeah, I still root for the Huskers, of course, but normally I kind of pull for the Cougars when we're not playing them. So it's kind of weird. People are like, how can you support them? I'm like, because I love these people. I love the students there. I love the professors I've gotten to meet. And we've had some really great conversations. And, that's why we're doing this video today. We're going to talk about some really good conversations that we had last week.
Yep. And as we get into it, if you haven't liked this video, make sure you like the video. We've got people watching. Make sure you like it on the church split page, like it on Free Thinking Ministries YouTube page. In fact, you might have two phones. You might have a computer and a phone. Watch or put one on Free Thinking Ministries, one on the church split. Get the algorithm boosted up, that sort of thing. Share the video too. If you've got a Mormon friend or a Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints friend, you can just share it with them. Say, hey, take a look at this. What do you think? And we'd love to have that have that conversation. As always, anytime we talk about people or arguments that people are forwarding, we also want to extend an olive branch to say, hey, we'd love to have the conversation with you as well in the near future. So this is not us trying to dunk on people that can't have a conversation. I know Tim is possibly going to be able to have a live debate on these sorts of issues. This is a kind of relatively new coming up.
Well, let me jump in. I mean, literally like 45 minutes ago, as I was getting ready for this live stream, I get a text asking me if I'd be willing to do a debate or a discussion with a Mormon in Las Vegas on the 18th of this month. And I thought, well, surely I'm already booked because it's a very busy month. And I looked at my schedule, like, I've actually got it free. So I said, sure, why not? I don't even know who it is. And then it turns out, well, it's going to be a 3-on-3 conversation. Turns out that I'm going to be there with Micah Kunkel, Brett Kunkel's son, Brett, who started MAVEN. It's going to be
shout out MAVEN.
Yeah. And also Marcus Bratton. So you got Bratton and Stratton joining forces in this 3-on-3 with Micah Kunkel. And I don't even know who we're talking to. I don't really know what the topic is going to be specifically, but yeah, it looks like that's going to happen. So here's what's interesting is I've been making all these trips to Utah over the years. And primarily I do love the people out there, but I've never considered their worldview anything to take seriously. Because in my experience, most of the members of the Latter-day Saints will often reject logic when you bring up some metaphysical issues, or say that's just something we're not allowed to know, or, and it just gets really flimsy. And, there's even other views that I disagree with can make a much stronger case. And so I've seen a lot of these other views as maybe more of a threat to the young people that people like Will and I work with. But we kind of brought them out to Utah because it's a good place to get your feet wet and didn't really have to worry about them running into good arguments for Mormonism, although they would get some arguments, but it was a good place to start these conversations. So I've never really cared to talk that much about it. And so you'll find on our website and our YouTube channel, we don't have much regarding the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints until recently. And a lot of that is because, to their credit, I think some of the younger members of the church have stepped up their game a bit. And I'm actually kind of proud of them. And they're taking logic seriously, and they're trying to make positive cases for their worldview based on reason, and they're trying to show that our view must be false based on logic and reason. Now, I think their views fail, but I've got to give it up to them. I'm like, good job, guys. This is what I've been looking for years. And and I do know some of the philosophy professors at BYU. They might be behind some of this. I do respect a couple of these guys. But I've got to say, some of these young men are really taking this seriously now and are willing to engage and say, let's reason together, Isaiah 1:18. And so it just brought joy to my heart to finally run into some guys there that want to have these kinds of discussions. And so I say, let's take it seriously and let's discuss them. So that's what we're going to do today.
All right. And along that line, hey, if you are wanting to be a part of the conversation, you can comment. We'll try to star ones that we want to highlight. I'm going to highlight this one. Fantastic name. Autistic Preacher says there have been more Mormons willing to talk and no longer seen discussion as contention. So good. I think that's good. So
Autistic Preacher is he watches a lot of the Church Split content, and he's He's got incredible testimony. I plan to have him on, but he's also debated Mormons. But I mean, basically, because of a lot of Calvinistic theology, believe it or not, he actually had a hard time overcoming like deep sexual like sin. And once he got out of Calvinistic theology, he realized that he wasn't made this way. He wasn't born this way. He could actually shift and change into the likeness of Christ. So I'm hoping to have him on just to tell his testimony, because it shows that our theology does play out practically in our day-to-day life. These aren't just metaphysical concepts. They are real ways that we walk and live.
Mm-hmm.
It's good. That's good. Yeah, awesome. I look forward to that episode. Let me know when it happens. Would love to,
I will definitely, for sure,
promote that. Yeah. All right. So Tim and Will, you guys ran into some guys there, and we have a video that we'll probably watch a little bit of concerning this creation dilemma, and that is kind of what we're going to tackle today. There's an argument being forwarded. There's the book by HaydenCarroll. This is the argument that's being forwarded, the creation dilemma. And Tim, am I right in summarizing the dilemma by saying, if creation ex nihilo is in fact true, then either God needs to be a universalist or God isn't an all good God? Is that kind of the idea?
I think they would agree that that's a good way to sum it up, and then they'd give you some premises leading to a deductive conclusion, and they'd say, let's look at the premises. So yeah, I think that's a good way to sum it up, though. And so I've got to be honest.
I'm glad you're honest.
Yeah, well, yeah. What I was going to say is I haven't read the book yet. It's really small, so I will read it very quickly. But I just got it late last night. But I did watch the entire video that these folks asked me to watch. I watched it, I think, 3 times. And so I wrote an article based on that. I ordered the book, and then I published the article yesterday, 2 days ago, maybe. And the book just got here, but I've skimmed through it. I've looked at a few. It's got a part on Molinism in here on page 19, 19 through, just 19 and 20. And, and I'll just say this, it says, last paragraph, as a result, while Molinism remains influential in some circles, it has never become a settled part of credal orthodoxy. And for the purposes of this discussion, it represents a significant departure from the traditional framework under examination. And so, while it's true that not many evangelicals or Protestants are even aware of Molinism, that's not the case among Christian philosophers and theologians. In fact, I think it was Dean Zimmerman, not a Molinist, who once said that it's either the fastest growing view of Christian scholars, or it is the largest view, one of the two. Yeah. Whatever the case might be, I answered a lot of these questions from the Molinist perspective, and that is an evangelical Protestant view. It's compatible with Reformed theology, a Reformed theology that rejects Calvinism. I get into that in my book. But as I went through this argument that's supposed to be the Christian God killer, I was like, well, Molinism has no problem with these objections, and I've already answered these objections in my published work. And so I wrote this article based on that. But now I get this book and I read this section on Molinism, and I'm like, well, he's kind of admitting that, yeah, his argument isn't against Molinism. And I'm like, well, it can't be against. You can't say then that it's against Christianity or the view of God that he creates everything. So yeah, I'm going to have to read more of this, and I will. I also, as I'm skimming through it, I don't think there's footnotes in it. So
I think it seems like an argument that they're throwing out there.
The argument kind of includes some of the same stuff that we've heard even with Calvinists and sometimes open theists, that it's just basically knowledge is causal. So they do a modal fallacy, but we'll get into that here in a minute. But I can say I've heard now 3 different presentations of this in the last couple of days, and I have not been overly wowed by it. I applaud the attempt. However, I don't think it's I don't even think you need Molinism to survive the objections. I think even classical theism and other basic foreknowledge, I think a lot of these can actually kind of dodge the dilemma. So
I do think that might be true. I do think that it puts pressure points on other worldviews, and I'm not going to say it defeats. I think it might defeat some, but it.
It defeats Calvinism, so
it puts some pressure on it. What were you going to say?
But that defeats Calvinism, so whatever.
I think it does. Yeah.
Well, Calvinism, but there's 1,000 ways you can cut that skin that cat. So anyway,
and they interestingly in this video, they also point out some potential problems for even Catholics who affirm libertarian freedom. But it's an interesting video. I encourage people to watch it.
Yeah. So should we get into that? Into the video. As I pull that up, Tim, I also want to point out one thing that you said in his book. He said that it's not a widely held belief in Christianity, right? Molinism.
Right.
But one of the things that I sought to show in some of my doctoral work right now is that I actually think it might be the default position of a lot of people. And I did an empirical study that surveyed over 200 people that seemed to show that middle knowledge is like middle knowledge with libertarian freedom is actually the default position of most people sitting in the pews, regardless of whether or not it's taught from the pulpit.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Many of us have had that intuition for years. Braxton Hunter has said, "Hey, when I talk to the old lady in the church and I ask her if 1 Corinthians 10:13 is true, and we as Christians have a real choice to make between sinning or taking the way of escape," she'll says, "Oh yeah, we have that ability." And he goes, "Okay, well that's libertarian freedom. When did God know how you were going to freely choose?" And she'll say, "Well, he's always known." And he's like, "Even before the creation of the universe?" "Yeah, he's omniscient." And he goes, "Okay, well, you are a Molinist." So now, Josh, in your doctoral work, you actually did a scientific study on this, and you're finding this to be the case. It's not just our inclinations.
Yeah. Yep. Let's get to a super chat here. We got a super chat coming in.
Nice.
This is from Thoughtful Theology 449. Says, "I just had a discussion with Hayden," that's whose channel we're about to pull up, on this Tuesday. Video coming on soon on his channel. Perhaps I could come on sometime to chat about it after release. Hayden is actually an awesome guy as well. Would love to. That's great. Also, anything that we do here is not to denigrate someone's character or to say they're not an awesome guy. In fact, as I watched this, I found these guys to be very likable. They're very sure of themselves, as most people will be. We will seem sure
I'll say the same thing about us.
That's what I was just going to say. We will
all
seem
the
sure of
time.
ourselves.
Like, if you're not sure of yourself, why are you talking and trying to teach, right? Like you should be relatively sure of yourself that, like, if I'm about to put this out in the public, I better be pretty confident in it. Yeah, they were very likable guys. They're very likable.
Yeah, very likable. So would love to have a discussion. So let me
just wondering is
go ahead. Let me pull this up.
Thoughtful Theology, is that you, Caleb? If it is, and you don't mind, let me know. Because I did meet a fantastic guy, and it's this young man named Caleb from Utah, and Will and all of his students got to meet him, and he was so great to talk to. One of the coolest guys that we've ever had interacting with our students before. And then he and I had some deep conversations as well. And so I don't know if that's him who sent us the super chat, but if it is or it isn't, just shout out to Caleb. And he's really the guy that got my feet wet with these arguments.
Okay, well, I got a small snippet to play here to introduce the argument. It's about 36 minutes in. Again, we can't do the whole thing because it's like an hour and 40 minutes. We do encourage you. We'll put the link in the description once we're done live streaming here. We do encourage you to go watch the whole thing. Make sure that we don't straw man anything. Make sure that we're taking it in context, that sort of thing. So the first 36 minutes is just some conversation, kind of like what we're doing here. And now they're going to get into the argument. This is HaydenCarroll with Let's Talk with HaydenCarroll. And then all those in favor. I don't know what that young man's name is. I can't remember. I don't remember if they say it, but he's got another YouTube channel that it's linked to as well. So here is the first salvo of conversation in this episode.
Fascinating. Oh, Josh.
No audio on our end.
Pull up, go down to settings and make sure that whatever you're sharing, there's this little thing that you click over on StreamYard that says share audio of whatever it is.
Okay, hold on. Let me do something else. I'm trying to, for some reason the browser that I'm trying to use, the one that you told me to use, is Will.
Way to go,
is
Will.
not working as well as
I use it all the time.
It's all Will's fault.
Yep.
Yeah, it's probably operator error, to be honest with you. It's operator error.
Like boomer problems. I get it. That's fine.
Yeah, I am an old fogey. I've got gray hair. I don't doubt that. All right. So let me try to do it this way then.
All right. You do you.
What? Do. Okay.
Holy dead air, Batman.
Yeah, was that okay? Let's see. Can you hear it now?
Yes.
I have discovered this argument when I was reading a theologian named David Bentley Hart, and he's an Eastern Orthodox theologian. And he was like, look, guys, if creation from nothing is true, then you have to be a universalist. Like you have to, the mortal destiny of everything that God creates has to end up in the best possible state of affairs, or it's a reflection on God. Because
okay, I want to pause it there to ask the question. What do you think of that, Tim and Will? It's interesting because he said the best possible state of affairs. I think that's an important.
Well, I mean, that's assuming the fact that's assuming the fact kind of was front loaded to this question, is that because God is perfectly good, therefore he will save all his creation, therefore must be universalism, he's going to be perfectly good. Mm-hmm. But that is presupposing that the freedom to reject God and having built in true freedom to make choices is somehow not morally good. If God can actually give us free choice, then that is morally good. And if true freedom is morally good. So we know this as Americans, right? Like freedom, we're land of the free, you have the choice to live this way. So kind of already preloaded in that, no, it doesn't have to be universalism, because it's good that he gives you the choice to reject or to accept. Because I like to always put it that if God is good, that's his nature. So when you choose to follow him, you are choosing goodness itself. When you reject him, you're rejecting goodness. So when you understand it as that you're siding with the enemy, you're siding with Satan when you reject him, then it makes a lot of sense why it's like, well, then that doesn't need to be universalism. Then you sided with evil. So
so this is kind of related to the Euthyphro dilemma a bit. When you start to realize that God is the good, or as I like to point out, God is love, 1 John 4:8. And according, there's a argument, maybe we'll get into it here shortly, but that Kirk McGregor advanced at the Evangelical Philosophical Society last year. Josh, you were there for it.
Yeah.
And it's on our website now, and I'm doing more work building on that now. But his argument basically shows that the ontological argument is true, and he defends the ontological argument. And then he goes further and says, now, if this conclusion is true, God has to be a trinity, a triune being. No more or less. And so it's amazing. I'll talk about this shortly. But if that's true, if God is a necessarily existing triune being in an eternal state of love without beginning, then love is more fundamental to the universe than physical stuff and matter itself. And so that's pretty awesome when you think about that. And then it follows that if God is love, then he would create on purpose and for the specific purpose to love. Now, with that in mind, here's an argument that I've advanced in 2 or 3 books now. You can find this in Faith Examined, a book dedicated to Frank Turek. I discuss the problem of evil from a Molinist perspective. It's also in the forthcoming edition of Human Freedom, Divine Knowledge, and Mere Molinism. Should be out in the next month, maybe.
You keep saying that. I don't believe you till it happens.
Well, look, just the index. The index is all that's not finished yet. I think it's about done.
Okay.
So everything else,
better.
Yeah.
I'll tell you this. I'm a little sad that it's finished, and I can't really make changes in it anymore to this point, because I told Will on the trip to Utah last week, I was like, I didn't thank you, because I thanked a bunch of my colleagues, and I'm like, if we would have had this trip first, you would have been in my thank
in
you.
the index.
Maybe I have a little note at the bottom of the index, throw it in there. Thanks, Will.
Footnote the index,
Yeah, see what I can get away with here. But anyway, here's
right.
an argument that I'm advancing there. It's not word for word, but it's pretty close. So premise 1, if God is omnibenevolent, and that just means perfect goodness and love. And I want people to focus on the love here. If God really is love, as it says in 1 John 4:8, okay? So if God is omnibenevolent, and again, that's going to be desires the best for all people, desires, at minimum, it means you at least desire the flourishing, the eternal flourishing of all people, right? So if God, premise 1, if God is omnibenevolent, then he desires genuine eternal love relationships with humans. Premise 2, if God desires genuine eternal love relationships with humans, then he creates humans with libertarian freedom. 2.1, a genuine love relationship requires libertarian freedom. You can't force love, right? Otherwise, you got a robot or a puppet. Premise 3, if God creates humans with libertarian freedom, then he allows evil and suffering, all kinds of evil and suffering, actually. Well, 3.1, because evil and suffering can result from libertarian free choices. See Hitler and the Holocaust. And 3.2, God knows that unless he permits such freedom and the possibility of evil and suffering, then some persons would not freely choose to participate in the eternal, fully redeemed state of affairs, right? The new kingdom and of heavens and earth, right? Or the new earth, new heaven. You get what I'm saying? Paradise for eternity. Premise 4, God is omnibenevolent. He's perfect in love. And then finally 5, therefore, God allows humans to experience all kinds of evil and suffering. So I can defend those premises here shortly, but let's,
Well, one thing I want to make sure we mention is that that's why we believe strongly in not only libertarian free will, the ability to choose otherwise, but also the fact that that's what love is based on. You have to have a choice. What makes my relationship with my wife special is that she could have chosen somebody else, but she chose me, the poor thing, right? And what she didn't, I didn't I didn't go to Hogwarts, brew love potion, slip it in her drink, and make her fall in love with me. I let her choose to fall in love with me. So this whole idea has to lead to universalism. No, I leave it up to my wife's free choice to stay in covenant with me. She could walk out the door today. That is logically possible, and she could do that. And because I love her and her freedom, I love her enough to let her have freedom. So even with my own kids, I mean, we do this with if you ever raise children, we let our kids choose to sometimes do something. We're like, that's not a good idea. And then it happens, they hurt themselves and you're like, well, you live and learn.
And as they get older, we give them more and more freedom.
Exactly.
Mistakes, so they can learn from them.
And also, I'm even willing to bite the bullet on this, even for the sake of argument. All right, like I'll say, okay, cool, I can choose. Fine, I'm a universalist then. Even if you get me to universalism, I don't find that too crazy. The early, Origin and the early church believed it. Right. Still, we have more historical accounts for Christian universalism than we have anything compared to LDS doctrines ever in the history of ever until Joseph Smith. So,
since you brought that up, so much of this creation dilemma argument depends on this medieval view of hell, I think, and I don't affirm that I don't affirm that view of hell, namely eternal conscious torment, or we like to call it ECT, right? At least in the sense of unending torture, and literal darkness and fire, that seems to be something that's impossible, metaphysically impossible. Dark fire. I don't know if that's possible, but how can you have literal darkness and fire at the same time? This fire and brimstone, this, pitchforks and torture racks. I don't think hell is like that, even if hell is eternal. And in fact, on this very channel, if you go to our live videos, a couple years ago, 2-3 years ago, I did a video on several different views of hell. In fact, here's some of them. I talk about an eternal conscious separation from God without the caricature of torment. So it's still eternal conscious separation from God, but they're not being tortured, right? Or they're not tormented, at least in a torturous kind of way, right? I'm also very open to annihilationism. I discussed that on my video. I've had Chris Date on this channel before, talking about how annihilationism is compatible with biblical Christianity. And ultimately, that's those who freely choose to be damned, freely choose to separate them. So, well, on Chris's view, he's a Calvinist, so he doesn't, there's free choice involved, but he would just say the damned are annihilated. Right. So they're not, it's an eternal separation from God, but it's not eternal conscious separation from God.
And if you want to, I have an entire channel on conditionalism. I have an entire video. You can go, hell, it's under my channel. Hell is not what you think. And I walk through all of it. It's an entire,
are you a conditionalist?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So so you're holding to this view called annihilationism or conditionalism.
Because God is life and to reject him is death. That I'll put it that simply put. So you die, you are destroyed. That doesn't, again, because God loves you, he gives you a choice because he wants the relationship to be genuine, just like you and I want our relationships to be genuine.
I refer to that. I've referred to annihilationism over the last several years as kind of my fallback position. While I've kind of been partial to what I call the Great Divorce view from C.S. Lewis's book, The Great Divorce. And that's basically a view where those who freely choose to reject Christ freely for eternity continue to move further and further away from him. But in the end, the gates of hell are locked from the inside. There's nothing metaphysically, deterministically preventing them from ever coming to Christ. But yeah, so that's what I call the C.S. Lewis view or the Great Divorce view. Now, I got to tell you, I'm really impressed with Chad McIntosh's view that he just gave at the regional EPS just a couple weeks ago. And I had the chance to sit on a panel with him, and then he gave the main talk at the event, and it was on his new view of hell, which he calls it the monster view. And if you go to my if you go to the website with the blog that I just published, I linked it in there if people want to click on it. It's amazing. What he does, and he does this survey of all the different verses that the different, the people advocating for the different views of hell are using to justify their positions. And then he uses all of them. And he gets, in a sense, eternal conscious separation. He gets some suffering on the other side of death, but not eternal torment anyway. He gets a form of annihilationism all at once. It's probably too much for us to unpack right here, but Chad.
Well, we'll have him on the channel soon, and
we'll
unpack it there.
He's going to be on the channel very soon. Yeah,
I do want to get to one more super chat. It was Thoughtful Theology said, by the way, name is Taylor, small channel, graduated with master's from Trinity, which is Braxton School.
That's my school.
He's the one who gave the super chat earlier.
Okay.
So thank you for that. Yeah, if you go to Trinity College of the Bible and Theological Seminary, you can take a class from Dr. Tim Stratton. Right. I don't know if that's a selling point. I hope it is, but
hey, so let me give you one more view
sorry.
of hell. And I've actually published on this a little bit in I can't talk, in an academic journal article. But it's what I call Molinistic hopeful universalism. Okay, so from a Molinist perspective, I think we can hope for universalism. And so this is a view in which God creates the best feasible, freedom-permitting world where evil is ultimately defeated and all are eventually saved, even if they have to experience millions or billions of years of hell before they learn how stupid it is to reject the law of Christ. And so, yeah, the hope here is that what I'm hoping for is that there's a feasible world available for God to exist and where all are ultimately saved, even if they have to go through millions or billions of years of hell. And I contend that if such a world is feasible, look, a possible world exists like that, but a possible world is not the same thing as a feasible world. All right. So if a feasible world exists that is available for a maximally great being to actualize, then I say a maximally great being would create it no matter how much finite suffering is included. So no matter how much evil is in this world, no matter how many holocausts are in this world, no matter how many horrible things are in this world, from moral evil to natural evil to animal suffering. Will, you've got a lot to say about that, and anything else you can think of. If that world exists, a perfectly good, loving, and intelligent and powerful God would create it if everybody is ultimately saved into the infinite future. So I am open to, do I affirm universalism? No, I don't think that a feasible world is available for God to create. Can I prove it? Nope. So I can hope for it. Like in Dumb and Dumber. So you're telling me there's a chance.
Tim, do you know, I felt like I heard Dr. Kirk McGregor do an interview. I don't know if it was with you or someone else, where he espoused some sort of similar feeling where he thought it was possibly true.
I think it's possibly true. Yeah.
Or even maybe probably. I can't remember. Yeah. Do you know if that's his position? I can't.
You know, I think I've talked to him about it. We've talked a lot about these things. And so it wouldn't surprise me. I can't remember for sure, but yeah, it would not surprise me if that's Kirk's view.
Yeah.
Or at least he's open to it like I am.
Yeah.
So, but here's the thing. This book, with a very creative argument, it's really going after those who believe that, I mean, it's going after people who affirm the Kalam, cosmological argument, that God created out of nothing. And it's going after those who
and the classical version of hell that you just learn in Sunday school, right?
The classical version of hell. So look, all of these other views of hell that I've put on that, like I've ruled out the version that he's attacking, and a long time ago, based on scripture and logic. I put all these other views on the table, and I say I can't prove any of these, but I lean one way or the other. So does Will. So do, all of us do. But look, all you got to do is pick one of these other views. Now in their video, he said, "Hey, but if you're gonna or the young man with the ball cap, I think he said, if you pick one of these other views, well, now you're a heretic, just like us Mormons. So welcome to the club." And I'm like, hold on a second. A different view of hell does not make one a heretic, because there's different views compatible with evangelical, biblical Christianity.
And different views compatible with the ontology of the triune God.
That's right.
That's why it's okay to have these debates and stuff and discuss and being able to like, okay, well, these are the views. But either way, to summarize back to the video, sorry, we've talked around it for a minute. Okay. It's none of this necessarily follows that God creates ex nihilo, that it has to then result in universalism. Right. That is presupposing a very particular narrow view of how God's love works and what is morally good according to God's own nature. So, and
you're presenting a false dichotomy where
exactly
it's one or the other. There aren't live options on the table. And I think that's what Tim's getting at too, is there's actually a bunch of live options and we can figure out which one's most likely. That doesn't make you a heretic. Like, I don't think Will's a heretic because he believes in, annihilationism. Now I know some people who would call him that. I think they're wrong.
I was a fence sitter for years, guys. I was Mr. Great Divorce, ECT, CI, flirter with all of them. I was afraid of commitment, until actually I read some of the Gemara and some of the other Jewish texts, and I realized the parallels, and I was like, I think I just have to make my choice. I think this is just where I stand. But I reserve the right to change my mind.
That's right. And that, so I used to keep annihilationism or conditionalism. It wasn't even on the table of possibilities. I thought there's no way this could even be possible. But after trying to refute it for a few years, I realized I've got to at least put it on the table of possibilities. I can't rule it out. And it doesn't just hang out on the edge of the table anymore. It works its way closer to the center. I got to tell you, Chad McIntosh's Monster View. I can't wait to have Chad on the show here for him to talk about. That might be. It's in danger of winning me over. I got to tell you,
that might be the new favorite in the clubhouse. All right, let's do another clip here, because he's going to play. This is fine. We're going to react to a clip of him playing a clip of a debate that he's had. So it's like Inception. Yeah. So he's going to basically, I think this clip is supposed to summarize the argument. So instead of having to watch the hour, 40-minute long thing, we can watch the clip that summarizes the argument. At least that's what he says. So let's watch it.
This argument before. I think this little 2-minute clip summarizes it really well. So would you guys mind if I just pull that?
Oh, and I was going to say before this, they talk about how Mormon Latter-day Saints get around this objection from the Eastern Orthodox priest, because they have both the eternal existence of the soul and creation, and they also have some form of universalism. So they get it's a twofer. They actually, it's the best of both worlds to deal with this deal. And so then he goes,
which is loaded with its own problems, which we will unpack here in a minute.
Yeah. Yes. Which is what leads to this part of the clip. So I wanted to set that context.
That up, and let's just watch it real quick.
Run it.
And then tell me when to, you can interrupt me and I'll pause it. Okay. Oh, you know what? I think I need to make turn sound on. Yeah. Gavin, are you a Roman Catholic?
Yes.
Okay. Do you believe that the triune God ever wills the bad of any person on the earth?
No.
Okay. Can we just talk about that for a second? If God doesn't will your bad, but he made you knowing you were going to go to hell, how do you square that? That's the basis for the argument. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, so God only wills good for people. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. Do you agree with Catechism paragraph 600 that says, to God, all moments of time are present in their immediacy? Okay, let me ask it a different way. Do you believe God knows the absolute future?
Yeah, I would say that.
Yeah. Okay, so before creating any person, God already knows with certainty whether that person will ultimately be saved or not. Is that right?
Right.
Okay. Do you believe God is all powerful, the triune God?
Yes.
Okay. Is there anything in existence that is equal to or more powerful than the triune God? This question was the most surprising to me. It took him 30 seconds to answer that question. He was like, and then eventually he's like, no. And I'm like, are you Roman Catholic? What could be more powerful than God?
Mary.
Okay, let's pause it there for a second.
I just want to highlight this really quick. Open theism solves the problem. I actually contend that it makes the problem of evil worse.
Yeah. Well, and that's also their contention, right? In the video, they say
right.
open theism would solve the problem.
And
as they frame it. Yeah.
So
yes.
I've written on this multiple articles on our website this summer, talking about the problems that open theism has with the problem of evil and suffering. And interestingly, as Josh just pointed out, these young Latter-day Saints are moving toward open theism. But I was in a conversation with a young man either yesterday or the day before that we met in Utah, and he was moving towards open theism. And I was, I told him if I was a Mormon, I'd still be a Molinist. And I said, and actually, and then I quoted Joseph Smith to him. And it's clear that Joseph Smith believed that there are truth values to counterfactuals of creaturely freedom. And if there's truth values to counterfactuals of creaturely freedom, then why wouldn't there be truth values to future tense propositions regarding libertarian agents? So I don't think the the Latter-day Saint theologian should be appealing to open theism. I think it's going to open the door to worse problems of evil, and I don't think it's compatible with your official teachings. But we'll talk about
not only that, though, this is a modal fallacy. It was actually funny because when we watched Frank Turek, this creation dilemma was brought up to Frank, and you and I think we're both having like an existential meltdown in the crowd because we both wanted to take the mic. We're like, let me at him. Frank did a good job by the responding, but we just were like,
well, I actually went up and talked to that young man afterwards.
Yeah. That was Caleb.
I'm like, I'm going to go talk to him.
Yeah, the free will guy. Yeah, the other one. But the thing is with this is it's a modal fallacy. Knowledge doesn't equal causation. And yeah, God created this world knowing you're going to die, possibly go to hell. But that doesn't mean that he created you for the purpose of going to hell. And because you freely chose it. You still freely chose it. It deals again with feasibility, or what we call logically possible worlds is another way I'll put it. Like, it's like God cannot give me free choice and then withhold my free choice. Like if I am a rebellious person by nature, which by the way, I kind of am. I'm the guy who someone says jump and I go, no, why? Even though I might have wanted to jump, but now I don't want to, I'm just naturally that guy. So if God knows that you're going to respond to that, yeah, he wants the good for you. He always desires the good for you, but doesn't mean you're going to desire the good for yourself. So again, it goes back into that whole modal fallacy thing where you're thinking that knowledge is causing, and knowledge isn't causing. And God created all these wonderful souls and human beings and image bearers of himself, and he desires that all come to him, but not all of them will. And that doesn't mean he's the bad guy in the end.
He desires that all will freely come to him. I think I would throw that. So I want to put this comment up because I think we should address it. Ravissary 79, I don't know if I'm saying it right, but the appeal to the modal fallacy is itself fallacious if it doesn't accurately describe an argument that claims knowledge is causal. If it doesn't, but merely claims this is claimed, then it is false. I think the impetus is actually on the person claiming that knowledge is causal to explain how knowledge can be causal. Like you actually have to then. You're making a positive claim that knowledge can cause something, but what you're actually then it's almost an equivocation, because what you're actually doing is saying, well, God knows it and actualized the world, and so then that makes everything determined. It goes, okay, but God knows it, and then you pointed to an action that God did.
One of the things that people get. Tim and I talked about this a lot on our trip. Like, it was one of those things where knowledge, yes, knowledge is causal, but the guy who was even at the Q&A, he was like, yeah, but I can't choose otherwise if God already knows what I'm going to do. It's like, but what is that knowledge based on? Is it based on necessity, that he determined and actualized the world in such a way that you were predetermined to do X, Y, and Z? Is it based on necessity that it had to happen? Or was this knowledge based on the contingency of the free agent? Because if it's based on the contingency of the free agent, then you don't have a complaint. It's just simply God knows what you were going to freely choose to do.
Right.
If I have a broccoli and I have chocolate and I offer it to my daughter, I foreknow she's going to choose the chocolate. But that
choosing the broccoli.
Are you?
Yeah.
I am.
Okay. I'm
well,
proud.
I think actually that example might play more into the dynamic omniscience argument, because you don't know, because you can't know the future. But I would say, like, if you offer the chocolate and the broccoli to your child, and your child chose chocolate, and then you got in a time machine and rewound, and then offered the chocolate and the broccoli to your child again, in the same instance, you did that. You knew that she was going to choose the chocolate because you saw it, but that was still a free choice.
Right.
Just because you rewound the time doesn't mean that the free choice is. So what I think people get confused on here is they assume chronology is linked to the causal chain. Like they assume that it's because God's creative act is chronologically prior to my action, that means that it's determined. But even if his creative action is chronologically prior, if he has foreknowledge, his creative decree can actually be, my action can actually be logically prior to his creative decree.
Exactly.
Which then informs his decree. So the chronology is what throws people off. They think that because the chronology is as it is, and because we live in time, that we then have to do the thing necessarily,
Which
but
is why
that is the modal fallacy.
Which is
Yeah.
why it's important that you understand that what is that knowledge based on? Is it based on necessity or the contingency of the free agent? So if it's contingent on the free agent, then you're fine. Like it dodges. But I think you're right on the chronology, because people are like, well, he created it in the beginning, and then he knew that I was gonna. Yeah, but what did he know it based on? Based on you, like based on the free agent. So yeah, I think this entire objection collapses. And I have no problem, by the way, with open theism or dynamic omniscience. I always joke around that I flirt with her too. But I'm more married to, like, you could say, a more classic view of things, and timelessness and all that. But like, I could be convinced otherwise, but I don't think that it still doesn't follow. So
yeah. Well, good stuff. Well, let's can I go answer each of those questions that was asked in that debate?
Yeah. Do
Okay.
you remember the questions that he already said?
I
think
here. It's in my
okay,
blog.
yes. Yep.
Okay. So if
Let's
people
do
want to
that.
read this, it's in the blog I published a couple days ago.
Or you can go to the video, and it's at time marker like 39 minutes.
And the video is linked in the article as well, and I believe it's linked below.
It'll be linked in the description. Yep.
Yeah. All right. So the first question was, does God will the bad of any person? And so my answer is, well, that depends on what one means by a will. Does God desire the bad for any person? Absolutely not. God is love, 1 John 4:8. And scripture is clear that he desires all people to be saved and come to the knowledge of the truth, 1 Timothy 2:4. However, on a Molinist view, God may actualize a world in which he knows some will freely choose what is bad. That's not the same as willing or desiring their bad. It's permitting it within a broader plan aimed at the greatest feasible good. Next question. If God doesn't will your bad, why create you knowing you'll go to hell? My answer is this. At this point, the argument makes a crucial assumption that foreknowing an outcome is equivalent to intending or willing that outcome as an end. But that assumption is false. On Molinism, God does not determine who is damned. Rather, he actualizes a feasible world, a world in which free creatures act according to their libertarian freedom. In that world, salvation is genuinely possible for all. Nothing that actually exists deterministically prevents anyone from being saved, and God provides sufficient grace for each and every person. So if someone is ultimately lost, it's not because God willed or desired their damnation, but because they freely rejected the greatest good available to them. Moreover, God's decision to create is based on the best feasible freedom permitting endgame, a world in which the maximal number of persons are saved and evil is ultimately defeated. As I make clear in the book Faith Examined, New Arguments for Persistent Questions, Essays in Honor of Dr. Frank Turek, I contend that God created the best feasible freedom-permitting world in which evil is ultimately defeated and everyone who is not trans-world damned is saved. And the bracketed words leave room for hopeful universalism. All right, next question, 3. Does God only will good for people? My answer, well, God loves all people and desires the best for all people. 1 Timothy 2:4, 2 Peter 3:9. But willing the good does not entail determining or necessitating outcomes. It entails making flourishing genuinely possible and providing what is necessary for that flourishing. God does exactly that, according to my view. All right, next question. It's kind of 4 and 5 put together. Does God know the future, including who will be saved? My answer, yes. A necessarily omniscient being cannot fail to know all truth. He can't help it. God possesses natural knowledge, middle knowledge, and free knowledge. He knows with certainty what every free creature could, would, and will do in any given set of circumstances. But knowledge does not stand in causal relation. Knowing what you will do does not make you do it. You remain the source of your choices, and since nothing that actually exists deterministically prevents you from doing otherwise, then you could have chosen otherwise. Thus, libertarian freedom is perfectly compatible with God's perfect middle and foreknowledge. Questions 6, 7. 6, 7, 6, 7. I had to do that.
Oh gosh.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
I have a teenage son, so I just died
Look,
a
dude,
little
I'm a youth
inside.
pastor and I teach at a middle school and high school. I can't say verses 6 to 7 anymore when I'm teaching Bible class. It's like, I'm like,
You just have
verses,
to switch to Spanish.
like verses 5 through 8. They're like 8
Yeah.
is like 8's the next paragraph. Like, don't care. We're reading.
All right,
going.
questions 6 and 7. Is God all powerful and without equal? And I found it interesting that he said his first interlocutor took him 30 seconds to answer. Let me be clear. Yes, God is all powerful and without equal. Now, what does that mean? God can do all things that are logically possible. So that means he cannot do what is logically incoherent, e.g., create a square circle or a married bachelor, right? Those things are impossible for God to do. And that also means, since it's impossible to force people to love, God can't force true love, right? He can't force people to have a true love relationship with them. So he's got to give them free will. Now, I say likewise, God cannot actualize a world that is not feasible given the truth values about what free creatures would freely choose to do. So that's the difference between a possible world and a feasible world. And if somebody doesn't understand this difference, then they really shouldn't be having the debate. You got to understand the difference between a possible and feasible world before you enter into this discussion. Question 8. Is God free to create or not create individuals? Well, God is free to create. This is my answer now. God is free to create or refrain from creating. There were not any antecedent conditions sufficient to necessitate God creating the universe and all of its contents. All things are contingent upon God. The Apostle Paul makes it clear that Jesus himself is the creator of all things, visible and invisible. Check out Colossians 1, 15 through 20. Paul is clear. Paul can't go to more lengths to make it clear that it's all things, all things, all things. And he never says all things just in this universe. It's all things, visible and invisible, are created by Jesus himself. Okay, let me go on. I said, however, once God chooses to actualize a particular world aimed at the best feasible end game, certain constraints follow. Given the web of creaturely freedom, some individuals may be necessary for the realization of that feasible world and end game. In other words, not all logically possible worlds are feasible worlds. For example, I have a friend, call him Sam, who was born and raised in an atheist household. He initially attended my apologetics class to challenge my arguments and attempt to persuade others toward atheism. Ironically, within a few weeks, Sam became a Christian, to the dismay of his atheist parents. Now consider the question. Why would God create Sam's parents who freely reject Christ? Well, the Molinist answer is not that God prefers their rejection and damnation. Rather, it's this. It may be that there's no feasible world in which Sam freely comes to Christ without being born into precisely those circumstances. And we can press this point even further on a traducian view of the soul. And this is the view, by the way, that J.P. Moreland advances. And J.P. Moreland might just be the top scholar regarding the soul of all philosophers in the world.
Well, now Joshua Ryan Ferris is
now I'm going to bring up Joshua Ferris here soon. Ferris would definitely be up there. He's probably number 2 in my opinion. But they hold different views. Josh Ferris is a creationist, and J.P. Moreland is a traducian. But for this argument to work, you've got to take them all down, and it doesn't take down the traducian view. And I think Joshua Ryan Ferris would have some things to say about the creationist view. But just let me talk about the traducian view here. Back to Sam. Sam's very identity is directly tied to his atheist parents, just as his unique biological identity also depends on his parents who are atheists, right? So too does his existence as that very person. So you remove those parents and you do not get the same individual, you literally get someone else who would be getting saved here. So even setting traditionism aside, though, the broader point remains. The identity and history of persons are deeply interconnected in ways that place real constraints on which worlds are actualizable or feasible for God. Thus, if God desires to actualize a world in which Sam is freely saved, so he can have true love with God, it may be necessary, given the web of libertarian freedom and personal identity, that Sam's parents exist and freely make the choices that they in fact make. And this illustrates a crucial point. God cannot simply remove certain individuals from the world without potentially eliminating the very conditions under which others would freely come to salvation, or even eliminating those very persons altogether. Therefore, the assumption that God could refrain from creating any particular individual without loss is unwarranted. So we don't have reason to accept that premise. Question 9 and 10. Will some go to hell, and is hell eternal? Here's my answer. As noted above, I do not personally affirm eternal conscious torment. I remain open to several alternative views, including Molinistic, hopeful universalism. Also Will's view of annihilationism / conditionalism, and Chad McIntosh's monster view. More on that soon. But again, even if we grant eternal conscious torment for the sake of argument, the dilemma still fails. Question 11. Is hell worse than heaven? My answer, yes. But recognizing that does not entail that God is morally obligated to prevent all possible bad outcomes, especially when doing so would undermine the greater goods of freedom, the best kind of love, and a genuine relationship with God and others. So with this in mind, consider a parallel issue. Many Latter-day Saints affirm that libertarian freedom continues into the afterlife. I think they're right about that. That is a point of agreement between us, and an important one. We both disagree with Calvinists who affirm exhaustive divine determination. But it raises a pressing question. If libertarian freedom persists into eternity, what guarantees that all agents will always choose the good? To see the tension, consider a thought experiment. Suppose an individual who lived a deeply immoral life, someone like Hitler, he's easy to pick on, enters the lowest kingdom of glory in, the Church of Latter-day Saints, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints espouses here. So it's often said that even the lowest of these states, of the three levels of exaltation, that the lowest of these states is far better than anything we could experience here on earth. But now ask this question. If this individual retains libertarian freedom, as I affirm that they do, and as Latter-day Saints affirm that they do, is it guaranteed that he will never again choose hatred, resentment, or harm? If the answer is no, then the possibility of ongoing moral evil remains, even in a supposedly elevated postmortem state. And if that possibility remains, it's not clear how such a realm could be described as a true paradise for all, especially for those who would be the objects of such hostility. So, I mean, just if Hitler still hasn't learned his lessons, and he still has libertarian free will, and God isn't going to zap him and start determining him like a puppet, then he's in this lowest level of heaven, still trying to persecute all the Jews, which would include, I mean, if he could, he'd still want to persecute Jesus and the disciples since they were Jewish. So this doesn't sound any better than here. In fact, it kind of sounds like hell. So I don't see how this is supposed to be better than the current state of affairs we're experiencing. But if the answer is yes, if it's guaranteed that all agents will eventually and permanently choose the good, then a deeper question arises. What grounds that guarantee? If the outcome cannot fail, then it's not clear that agents retain robust libertarian freedom in the relevant sense. After all, if no future deviation from the good is genuinely possible, then we're faced with a state of affairs in which no genuine alternative possibilities remain available to the agent. That raises serious questions about whether libertarian freedom is being preserved in the relevant sense. And if, on the other hand, the outcome can fail, then the possibility of ongoing moral evil remains even in the afterlife in heaven, even if it's the lowest degree of heaven. And if the guarantee is grounded in the idea that God knows how agents would freely develop under certain conditions and ensures those conditions obtain, then the view begins to resemble a form of middle knowledge and Molinism, precisely the kind of framework often rejected by those who might advance this creation dilemma. So anyway, at this point, one might respond that God ensures without determining eventual moral transformation under ideal conditions in the afterlife. But this raises further questions. If there are ideal conditions under which agents freely but reliably choose the good, then why were those conditions not actualized from the beginning? And if those conditions do not undermine libertarian freedom in the afterlife, it's not obvious why they would undermine it in this life. If, on the other hand, such conditions are not universally feasible, then the original objection loses its force, for it assumes that God can actualize any logically possible outcome. So the deeper issue is this. Any view that affirms libertarian freedom must also account for the continued possibility of moral failure, unless that freedom is somehow constrained or rendered infallibly good. And once that's acknowledged, the original objection against classical Christian theism loses much of its force. Okay, that was the longest answer to the question. I'm almost done. Question 12.
This should have been a video all in of itself.
I know. I just got to get through this, and then I'll quit talking. I'll let you
15
guys.
minutes of although someone did say he's cooking. So there you go.
Okay.
Morgan, what up?
Question 12. Does omnibenevolence mean ensuring the best outcome for all? And I say no. An omnibenevolent being creates persons with libertarian freedom. Otherwise, love, the greatest good, is impossible. And it provides and also provides genuine access to salvation and desires the flourishing of all people. But that does not require overriding free choices. You can't do that and it still be love. 13, final question. How is creating someone knowing their fate, willing their good? My answer, because willing someone's good does not entail necessitating their response. God wills the good of every person by creating a world in which their salvation is genuinely possible. They can get it, fully resourced and not deterministically prevented by anything external to the agent. If a person is ultimately lost, it's not because God willed, desired, or determined their damnation, but because they freely rejected the greatest good actually available to them within the best feasible world. So I just wanted to answer each of those questions because I don't think the interlocutor on this video that Hayden played did a very good job. That's how I would have answered the questions if I was on the video and if I was having that debate. I've talked way too much, so I think I'm just going to be done for a while. So you guys carry on.
Well, no,
right.
So yeah, the whole thing with this is, again, to just bring this down, because as someone who's a pastor and also works with students, I try to take these like really complex metaphysical things and bring it down to the normal level. One of the things I love about Tim is that he always works in premise, conclusion. But it makes it for clear thinking. You can follow the train of thought. And so the whole issue here is that willing isn't determining. I can will someone to, like, will is like a want or desire. The biggest problem with Calvinism and others that they think that will means causation, or that God, they look at God as a form of will, almost like whatever he wills has to come to pass. But what God did, I love how C.S. Lewis put this. God took a risk by giving mankind true freedom. He could have. It's a logically possible world to create, one where we're all sanctified, we're in heaven and getting along all holly jolly, but we don't have freedom in that world. So therefore, it's against God's good nature to create said world, because he wants true, genuine, free choosing relationships. So yeah, it's not causation. God can will something. He took a risk by giving up control over mankind to allow mankind to make free moral choices. So that's something that just always will. It kind of it was shocking to me that this is still brought up. However, on Mormonism, there's actually a greater, deeper like issue here, because they believe that the universe didn't really begin to exist, but is eternal, along with matter. Matter is eternally pre-existent, and that we somehow are pre-existent beings from our Heavenly Father and Mother, while also somehow being their children who are born in spirit and then also born in body. Yet we're somehow eternal. All this stuff is eternal, which means, by the way, if you're familiar with the infinite hotel dilemma, this causes a real problem, because how do you even get to today?
Yeah.
How do you even get to the birth of Will Hess in June 1991? How do you get to that?
1991. Jeez.
Yeah,
Oh,
I know. I'm a baby. So it creates this infinite regress back of just how do you justify that? How do you get to matter in the first place? You can't get to today. There is no way to get to today if that is true. But also, they seem to want to have their cake and eat it too, as they posit this against us. I would posit back, how can I be a necessary being and eternal and also be contingent on the birth from my heavenly mother and father, and then also my earthly father and mother? How can I be eternal and contingent at the same time? That is a one-sided stick, and that's not how this works. That is a square circle. That is logically contradictory and therefore is not a thing.
Yeah, that's good. Along with that, the idea that God could, within his right, create a world where everyone obeys him because he's caused them to do that. He could do that within his right, but he chooses to limit himself. And for people who will say, well, then God's not all powerful, I'll be like, well, then what was Jesus doing? In the incarnation, he chose to limit himself to a certain extent in the incarnation so that he could save us, right? So that we already have a precedent for God choosing to do that for the good of his creation. Why would that not be the case with free will? God would choose to, yes, he could create a world in which every single person obeys him because they have no option not to. Like I think Alex O'Connor has said, why even put a tree in the middle of the garden? It sets them up for failure. It's like, no, actually, that is like the most easy thing to obey ever. Don't eat of that tree. It's literally the easiest thing to obey. He made it so simple, so easy to say, don't eat of the tree. And when you do, what you're doing is you're putting yourself on the throne and you're redefining good. And I'm the only one that's good. And if you redefine good, that means you redefine yourself away from my presence. And that means I have to kick you out of the garden because you've now changed the culture. You've now changed the terms of our agreement. You've now made it so that you are the one that's going to define good. And now we're at odds with one another. And I'm the all good creator. And now you are the created and you think you're the creator. And now we have to separate. And because of that, then God says, but I'm not going to let you stay mired in that separation. I'm going to choose to enter into that, to experience pain, to experience suffering, to experience death, and to rise again. Easter's coming up this weekend. And all of that works together for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. It's all right there. And it doesn't mean that the outcomes all have to be equal. It's like it's almost like, now I'm not accusing them of being like and I know we throw around Marxism too much, but it's almost like this Marxist theology of, well, everyone needs to have an equal outcome. It's like, right. No, they need to have this equal opportunity to come freely to the God that created them.
100%. It's about, and you're not wrong though, because that is the idea. It's like, yeah, okay, well, you're all equally in the image of God, therefore you must have all equally the same outcome. But the thing is, we know that's untrue. Like, we see how many evils happen. I'm on X and I follow all the most crazy accounts because I know that the media doesn't tell about the evils in this world. And it's like, okay, so that happened, but does that guy deserve the same outcome as I got? Does Hitler really deserve the same outcome as Mother Teresa? Are you serious? So no, I deny the framing. I deny the entire thing. It's not equal outcomes, equal opportunity to come to the Father and be saved. And by the way, it means you can do some really horrendous evils and still completely repent and turn around and enter heaven and into Jesus Christ's presence. So no, I don't buy that for a second.
Yeah. I think I have one more clip that I want to play, and then I think we need to be done after this.
Yes, I have to go somewhere. I have a fundraiser I have to be at.
Yeah, I have to go somewhere too. Mine's
Raising
on a
funds
fundraiser
for Free Thinking Ministries.
For a local Christian school that I teach at.
Okay. Although you can go to freethinkingministries.com/donate and you can help continue our march forward in the progress of reason and sound theology. So you can go to that. So yeah, let's take a look at this because I thought this was interesting. I don't think either of you guys know that I'm going to play this clip, but here we go.
Protestant, like, can God make a human that is free-willed and perfect? And I've heard some Protestants say, well, no. And Catholics can't really use that because they have Mary, who what God made without original sin. So can he just if God can make someone without original sin, why do we have original sin?
Amen.
Because some guy exactly 6,000 years ago ate a fruit that he wasn't supposed to.
Not only did he eat a fruit, he followed a woman.
I just had to stop it there.
All right.
Sorry,
Ooh.
he's gonna get hate mail. He's making a joke.
No, so but that's the thing is like that's why I deny Augustinian original sin that the Catholic Church, due to their teaching of the magisterium, have to affirm. Because if God, that's what one of my arguments against like Augustinian original sin, especially Catholicism, which is like, so God was able to do the Immaculate Conception. The Immaculate Conception, a lot of people misunderstand this. The Immaculate Conception is not that Jesus was born sinless. It's that Mary was born sinless that enabled her to give birth to a sinless Jesus. Because Augustine taught, using some verses from Hebrews out of context, that the sin gene passed through the seed of the man, and therefore she had to be born sinless and not couldn't be corrupted by sex. So that's why she had to be a virgin, to not be corrupted by the sin, so she could have Jesus.
And that's why Jesus couldn't have brothers. That's why. Virgin.
And the thing is with that is like, or just as exactly as Isaiah said, and this will be a sign unto you. Easy enough. The sign that he was born of a virgin. So I agree with him on that I'm like, yep, good job, Catholic theology. There's a reason why I'm not a Catholic. So.
Well, it's interesting because the question that he starts with is, could God create a person that has free will that is perfect, right? Isn't that what he says? And he said Protestants will say no, but Catholics will say yes. I'm not even sure it's a huge issue for Catholics. I agree with you, Will, on all, because all it would take was God knowing that there is a person that would not sin. And he creates that world in which there is one person that would not sin. I don't.
I think that's going to.
And I think that's problematic.
Yeah, it's problematic.
So I think the Protestant answer is better, that, well, since God doesn't control the actions of free beings, no, God wouldn't create a free will being to be perfect.
Yeah, well, that's where
to be free, and then their choice is on them.
Well, this is why I make a distinction between perfect and innocent as well. Like, I think babies are innocent. I think Adam and Eve were born in a state of innocence, not perfection, because obviously they were in a state of perfection. They wouldn't have fallen. So I think innocence versus perfection is an important distinction. That one is innocent of knowing right from wrong. Deuteronomy 139, your children do not know good from evil. You know, that's they were not held accountable to what their parents chose to do because they did not know good from evil. They were innocent of such a decision because they're too young. You know, my 5-year-old daughter, I'm constantly like, honey, that was kind of rude, because she's really OCD, and if something goes against her little OCD nature, where that thing's supposed to be, she's a classic girl. She's like, Dad, you did that. And I'm like, easy. You know, like, you're innocent. I get it. You don't realize that you're actually being really disrespectful the way you said that right now. In fact, actually, what was it? Like 2 weeks ago, right before I left for Utah, actually. She was like, Dad, I was like, hey, honey, let's get your backpack. Let's get going. We got to go to school. And I was like, oh, wait, where's my laptop? And I went to go find my laptop. And my 5-year-old daughter goes, Dad, you're wasting my time. I was like, honey, that's really disrespectful. And I had to stop myself. Like, that's pretty fire. That was hilarious. Like, yes, you are right. But also, you know, mind your business. Like, be respectful. But she's innocent. She didn't know when I talked to her about it. She started crying. She felt really bad. And I'm like, honey, it's okay. Like, I don't think you meant to be disrespectful. You're just trying to articulate, like, okay, I got this backpack and now I'm waiting on you. Like, I get what was happening, but innocence is different than perfection. That's my point.
Yeah.
But
you know, I've got 2 articles on the website called Can God Create Morally Perfect Creatures? Part 1 and part 2. I wrote those years ago, probably close to 8 to 10 years ago. I don't know. Another one called The Best Kind of Love. And so I'd point people there, and ultimately I'd say no, God can't create a perfect creature who is guaranteed to never sin unless that feasible world exists. But a perfect creature will be perfect in love, right? And we've already quickly discussed that love requires libertarian freedom. You can't force love. That's like drawing a triangle with 4 corners. And so God can create perfectible creatures. He can create sinless creatures. He can create innocent creatures, as Will said, but he's got to give them freedom. And if they would freely choose to use that power in a backwards manner, I say it like this: the same power that allows us to love, it's a supernatural power, by the way. In fact, it's a supernatural power, and it's a communicable attribute given to us by God because of his triune perfection, that he's in this eternal triune state of love. Right now, he is love necessarily, but God cannot create a being that necessarily loves, because you lose freedom at that point. So God has libertarian freedom in the sourcehood sense, maybe not in the ability to do otherwise sense. I would say he doesn't have that power, but he has to give us the power to love or not love in order for it to be truly up to us. He can't make us love. And this is all in the article called The Best Kind of Love. So I'll point people there. So with that said, can God just create ex nihilo a morally perfected creature? No, he can't. But he can create an innocent creature who's not impacted by moral sin. Although we'll still be impacted by being born into the world, missing the mark, not even knowing there's a mark to hit.
Yeah,
that's another topic we could go on for, but we'll do it later.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Hey, people, if you're watching this, go ahead and give this video a like, share it with a LDS friend if you'd so choose to do so. One other thing I want to add to the end of that is I thought Frank Turek in the Q&A, and maybe we should put that in the, and Will responded to some of the Q&A the other day. I watched that live stream, great live stream yesterday, I think last night.
Yeah, last night. It was late.
Yep. And I actually thought Frank's answer to the free will in heaven problem was really good.
Yeah, he did really well. He had his Wheaties that day. You can tell.
Yeah. He
There's
did.
only 3 things in the Q&A. I was like, I wouldn't have done it that way, but like I found his answer, acceptable. It was just, I was like, no.
I thought his, because I think that also solves the problem of free will in heaven and whether or not we would sin in heaven. The way he answered that question.
And so I was having a lot of conversations during that time. What would reframe is?
Well, I don't know that we've got enough time to do it here. But basically, what he says is, let me see if I can boil it down. Basically, what he said was, hey, my allegiance to you is going to be greater if I go through something difficult and you save me than if I don't. And that's why Adam and Eve sinned, basically, because, God created them innocent, but they hadn't gone through that difficulty. And so they rebelled with God. But for us, it's like, our light and momentary afflictions to prepare us for the eternal weight of glory.
Exactly.
That's how I've been answering this question for years.
Yes, which I thought you would love the answer, because I thought he hit the nail on the head. And he used real life examples to explain to the person that's why even if we could sin, we would never sin in heaven. So basically that's what he says.
Difference between could and would.
Yep.
Yes.
All right. Thanks for tuning in, people. And hey, Will, thanks for coming on. We got to do this more often. Just
I've felt that every single time we do something together. I'm like, I need to do more collabs with these guys. We get along well. We think really well together. And after Tim and I actually did ministry side by side together on the front lines, I was like, we need to do this more together too. It was just really, it's really great to be here. I really appreciate you guys having me on. And of course, everyone go check out Free Thinking Ministries and all their work, and keep an eye out for Tim's new book.
Yes,
it'll be fun.
And I got to plug Will's book because he gave me a free copy, and I've been wanting to, but we've just been talking about it so much. Crushing the Great Serpent, and I think he's really onto something here regarding the atonement, and so highly recommend.
I like to think so.
Yeah, let's have you on to discuss this at some other point.
We did that before, but but
I wasn't part of it.
No, you weren't. How dare you?
I was gone.
I took it personally too.
He did. He cried before we went live, and it was bad. Like I had to his wife had to come in and tut him. It was, I'm just kidding.
You go too far. You go too
Yeah,
far.
yes, I do. All right. All right. Thanks for tuning in. We've gone for about an hour and a half, and Will's got a fundraiser to get to. I've got home to get to make supper. So, hey, give this video a like, subscribe, share it, what have you. And as we always say here at Free Thinking Ministries,
Stay reasonable.
stay reasonable.